I feel like we are watching a movie in which there is a force that we know nothing about that accounts for many of the things that we can see with our own eyes. And so what I'd love to know is what's going on behind the scenes that accounts for the various successes, failures, changes of course that we are all forced to grapple with.
That begs the question: what is leading you to believe there's hidden forces, or they might be emergent, they might not be individuals, or maybe they are individuals. But what do you mean by that?
Well, let's take the Epstein situation.
Yeah,
it was a funny thing to promise us transparency on that issue, to make indications that we were headed down that road, that we were going to see something important. And then a sudden about face in which the administration swears across the board that there actually is nothing to see and that we should be happy with the other accomplishments of the administration because aren't they wonderful? Something happened behind the scenes. Either they discovered something about what they had that caused them not to want to release it, or some leverage was revealed that caused them to realize they couldn't afford to release it. But I guess the point is, if they had said nothing and done nothing, I wouldn't necessarily infer something important. But having said, we're giving you this, and then making the embarrassing reversal of course suggests there's simply an element of this plot that we don't know anything about.
It's a very strange story on a lot of fronts because it's an old story. I talked about this in a recent video that I think the first big piece on Jeffrey Epstein was in the New Yorker in like 2002. And it laid out the story of him as this international man of mystery. And there was a cartoon version of him and Bill Clinton, chummy, with Chris Carter and the actor whose name is escaping me from Usual Suspects, who got into a lot of trouble for pestery. It'll come back.
Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey. And this is the article where, Trump is sort of says, oh yeah, Jeff and I are good friends, and he likes girls as much as I do, and he likes them young, and even saying that in public is weird in 2002. But you're a playboy in New York, I guess. I don't know, but it just keeps on going and keeps getting weirder. So, how do you understand what you know about this story, and why do you care?
Why do I care is the easiest question in the world, which is what we do seem to know about the story implies a sophisticated operation to collect compromise. There's some debate as to whether or not he was a freelancer arranging compromise for his own reasons or whether he worked for somebody. I think it's a slam dunk that he must have worked for somebody. But the point is this. The fact of the crimes committed by Epstein and the people that he was involved with is profound in its own right. Mm-hmm. But even if you put that aside, the important question for us is, what role is the Epstein Library playing in our governance of our own civilization? Yeah. Our civilization, to the extent that it is a departure from history, is based on the consent of the governed, which means that we govern ourselves. But if something has gotten leverage over important people sufficient to cause things that we want not to happen and to cause things we don't want to happen, then we are not self-governed. And we need to know, it is a top priority for us to discover whether or not the amount of steering that is being done with that material is major, which I suspect it is, or it's minor and it is and the world is roughly as we imagine it should be. So I don't see higher priorities than understanding to what extent the democratic nature of our society is a fiction.
Well said. This is one of the elements of the new world we're in that is so difficult to navigate if you see yourself as a truth seeker, which is when do I know that I have gathered sufficient information to be on the path of truth as opposed to caught in a web of lies? So specific to this story, like, how have you been trying to navigate that? How have you been trying to and maybe there's some generalizable principles for those of us that open up our phones and say, holy cow, I don't know what to believe, which is to say all of us. But how are you probing into this? What are you looking at? What are you dismissing?
Well, I would say I am in the lucky position of having spent my life building a toolkit that fortunately works across almost everything. The toolkit is scientific, and I don't mean by that what most people would mean. It's not technical, but what I do is I build a model, something often that I just hold privately, and I refine that model based on how it predicts things in the world that I couldn't possibly know. And to the extent that my model has value, it predicts things well. And to the extent that I've added something to it that's incorrect, its predictive power drops off. And so I think we all do this whether we know it or not. And the question is, how good are you at it? And the idea that the Epstein library, for example, was deliberately collected to shape world events is perfectly consistent with the idea that an administration that was promising to release this material would be opposed at the highest possible strength on its way towards attaining the office, and that upon reaching the office, that there would be a strange turnabout in which the materials would not emerge. So I guess the point is there is hidden leverage, and those who have it will do anything to prevent its loss. And that means that things will get strange. You will see a kind of distortion around some massive object that you can't detect, but it will cause things to warp. And that's exactly what we see every time in the Epstein case.
Yeah, I mean, one element of what has happened with this that is really strange is, I mean, it's historically strange to have this gap between presidencies, right? To have Donald Trump come into office in 2016, and all the facts of his understanding, knowledge, experience with Jeffrey Epstein are already known and haven't changed since. To then, for him to come out of office, to be prosecuted and persecuted with what looks like every tool his opponents have at their disposal, I guess save for this one, which is weird. If there is a tool against him that they could have used, why wouldn't they have? And then for him to come back into office, having already been in the presidency, and on the way in making promises about this material, which in the prior period, he technically, I guess, should have had enough power to know what was there. And now we're back and there's this turnaround. And that sequence is really weird because it's like, well, why didn't the Democrats use it against him for the past 4 years? Why would he and his surrogates make promises about releasing it, given that he should have known what's in here in the prior period if they knew they couldn't do that? So flesh that out for me, because this is the part of this that is really kind of crazy, actually.
I think this part's easy, actually.
Oh, okay.
Let's imagine that the cartoon view of what's taken place is roughly right, just broad brush, that Jeffrey Epstein was a front for an intelligence operation, maybe one intelligence service, maybe multiple intelligence services, probably the latter, but whatever. There's some hidden entity that enjoys a permanent advantage in terms of information, and that it went about collecting specifically useful information through Jeffrey Epstein, his connections, and his ability to parasitize the worst aspects of human character, etc. Okay, so you've got a pile of leverage points. First of all, you would want to use them as sparsely as you could. You don't want to define the leverage that you hold because somebody who is playing against you, who understands exactly what you hold, has a useful piece of information in its own right. So you would want to use it sparingly. In each case, you would never want to get to the bottom of the barrel where you've thrown everything at somebody that you wish to leverage and you have nothing left, because at that point, the incentives of the person who you've gone after with this piece of leverage has nothing left to lose, and they turn on you. So you would imagine that there would be a kind of a hierarchy of leverage, and that especially with a character like Trump, and I'm not saying that there are things about Trump himself in the Epstein library. I, of course, have no idea. They obviously had contact. Maybe, let's just say, I'm not arguing that Trump is in there in the way that we fear others are, but...
Like Prince Andrew, for example.
Right, like Prince Andrew, for example. But if you had a character like Trump who had proven that he was capable of leaping levels of the game and changing roles radically and defying expectations, the last thing you want to do is take whatever leverage you have and throw it all at him and hope it works. Because if it fails, now you've basically injured the grizzly bear and you don't have any ammo left.
And you've maybe exposed your tool set, right? That's the other piece, is that in doing that, you've now invited the game to be fully revealed.
Absolutely. So what you would do is you would have a kind of, this is the, break glass in case of emergency piece of leverage that we are going to hold back if the worst comes at us. What would the worst be? Oh, that the president himself is interested in revealing the leverage war chest. And that would be, just put yourself in the position of its owners. That would be apocalyptic. So you would have something. And whether that is a threat, a credible threat, or it is a revelation of compromise on people that Trump can't afford to lose or is emotionally connected to in a way that he would fall on his sword to protect them. Who knows what it might be? But let's just say an intelligence service which would have a virtually unlimited budget to create leverage would know a great deal about what would work to persuade Trump. They would have invested heavily in analyzing him, what wouldn't work, and the about face, Pam Bondi telling us it was on her desk and she was ready to go, and then Dan Bongino and Kash Patel telling us, hey, it all is on the up and up. We've looked at the file. He killed himself. That was such a strange episode. I think the most parsimonious interpretation is that there was chaos in the administration as they grappled with the fact that something that they had planned to do was no longer going to be done. And I also thought the president's tweet was profoundly revealing.
Which one is this?
So maybe it wasn't a tweet, maybe it was Truth Social, and I saw it on Twitter. But he said effectively exactly what you would imagine that the man we've come to know would say, which was, Epstein's dead. Get over it. It's in the past. There's nothing you're going to get here, but look at all the other marvelous things that you have gotten and are going to get. And would you really want to put that in jeopardy? In other words, he tried to negotiate with us, not understanding that Epstein isn't just a list of priorities. Like I said a few minutes ago, knowing the degree to which we do not live in a democratic republic and are being governed by dark forces that collect compromise and, cause us not to be able to govern ourselves is a different kind of priority.
If you like this clip, we've got so much more where that came from. So be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss our new videos as they come out each week.